Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon, and I am your host for the Afterlife podcast. So, we're going to dive right into today's topic, and it's called self loathing. Now, you may be wondering, if I talked about such a happy, bright topic with so much energy last time, why start off with negative energy this time? And I'm doing this because I want to share my story, my experience with this type of emotion, with negativity, because I deal with it on a daily basis. In fact, I'm not exactly in the best mood right now. And that's not to worry some of you, because some of you are my friends. And some of you are just random strangers passing by. It's mainly how I like to think about it, and I think it's a very thoughtful thing to still listen and tune in into these random rants and banters. That's pretty much all my podcast will be of. But anyways, so to start off this subject, I guess we have to go back to second grade. Now, I know this seems pretty far. That's like 2012, 2013, for me at least. Uh, and as far as that seems, and as unrealistic as they may seem that as a kid I already started feeling this, that's not exactly the case. I bring second grade up because it's when I started to have these second thoughts. But in the back of my mind, and it was very washed out because I didn't understand or comprehend the feeling. I didn't realize what it meant. I didn't realize that I would feel this way for the rest of my life. And so, second grade was when it started. But to jump way forward to seventh grade is when it truly stood out. Because some people met me when I tried to act depressed, when I tried to act all these negative feelings so that people would notice for attention, which was very unhealthy, very toxic, and it's something that I really wish never happened and that I regret. But it's all in the past, and the only way to move forward is by moving on from that past, from those past mistakes, issues I may have had, or anyone has had. And it makes me wonder how much people don't like me nowadays because of that. How some people may think I'm still under that mentality. I mean, I'm sure they would guess that I've changed, but that stigma and that feeling is probably still going to be there. And it's something that I wish I could apologize to everyone for. Something I wish that I could take back, but we can't. And that's what affects my self loathing. That's what makes me think that, guess I'm not worth it. Which is debatable. Objectively, my life isn't as worth as some. But however, that is because I think that they are special to me. So that can vary from person to person, that opinion. Which is fine. Everyone is subject to their own opinion. But to think about what others might think is probably the most frustrating thing, and the one thing that I feel very insecure about. Insecurity. Definitely another factor to self loathing, because sometimes they won't answer me. Maybe from a text, maybe because they're busy, whatever the case may be. And when that happens, my mind starts to think, maybe they did see it and they're just ignoring me. Maybe I'm not worth their time. Maybe, and then I start overthinking and I start going into all of these scenarios that are basically pointless and that lead nowhere. See, that's the funny part. Self-loathing can use up a lot of your time. Whether you're trying to go to bed, whether you're thinking about life every now and then, even during the day, whatever it may be, takes a lot of your time. And it's very wasteful. I would say that it doesn't help you for the most part. And I say for the most part because it can teach you a few life lessons. It can teach you about being grateful, about not keeping so big of an ego. But the weaknesses that come from that is what really diminishes the idea of self-loathing. And it almost makes it useless, if not completely useless, Because why waste time feeling so pity about yourself when you could feel happy with what you're given, with quality? Now you see, I am more of a quality over quantity guy. I'm the type of guy who thinks that, if I don't have like, let's just say 20 friends or something, that it's going to be fine. Because the 7 friends that I have that are close to me, they're all there for me. And that's the best I could ask for them. Or I don't even ask for them. They just care on their own, and that's enough for me. And honestly, some people look for the quantity or for both. But I say that when you keep your trust circle very close, it can be easier to tell them that, hey, I despise myself. And, there's nothing that you can do or I can do. So to tell you what, I'm going to resolve it just for the sake of you. That's funny. Because really, my friends and family are the reasons why I'm trying. Without them, I'd probably be stuck in my self-loathing self from 2017, from 7th grade or 8th grade, whatever the year was. I'd still be in that mindset, which was very unhealthy. And as I mentioned that it did no good, it's true. Because as of now, I'm not too happy. Like, it's not that my happiness is momentary, because I still appreciate a lot of stuff right now, but it's just not the same anymore as you were as a kid, which will happen. That's normal. Most things aren't very enjoyable as an adult as much as it was when you were a kid, because you have that innocence. You have no regard for all this negative emotion, and you joke about it until as an adult you start to realize, oh shoot, this is my life. And then that's when it becomes a dark humor joke, because it just clicks with you that as you become an adult and as you move on from life, from high school, from college, and everything, taxes, everything that comes with being an adult, you start to realize more and more that with negative emotion, it's very easy to come by. And it's so funny when they say that being nice is so hard. You would expect it to be easy. But most of the time, people only care about themselves. And that can be useful for you. It can be useful to yourself only, but to benefit others, sometimes it could also benefit you just as much. That's the problem people tend to overlook. They tend to think that, oh, well, if helping others is just as good as helping myself, then why should I even bother? See, my goal isn't to convince you, because I'm not arguing. I'm simply sharing my part of that story, because I have been on both sides of that spectrum. I've been on the side where I only care about myself, but I've also been on the side where I try to express my gratitude to everyone as much as possible, to a point where, yes, maybe they could be weirded out, uncomfortable or whatever, but they understand that I'm trying to do it because I want to do a nice gesture. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't call myself selfless. Some may argue against that, which is fine. In fact, I'm happy that they would. But most of the time, I would say a lot of negative things about myself. And it's not even just to do it. It's just because I think it's true. I think it's reality. But that's the funny part, because these thoughts, they cloud your judgment. They make you think it's reality when most of the time, it's all fake. Most of the time, it's not exactly the truth. And that's what everyone tries to tell me. And I don't listen when I should. It's funny. All this advice, all this experience that I'm telling you guys, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not listening to myself. And because of that, I've learned to give better advice over the past few months, or I guess you could say within the year, because I've dealt with very similar experiences that other people have before. It's not to say that it's very different from theirs, from their perspective. The scenarios could be different, the situation and the mentality. But more often than not, the similarities are very strikingly, well, shocking. It's almost parallel with each other. That's how I learn, and that's how I teach people. I teach from my failures so that they don't have to do it. Because if they end up like me, that's going to be my worst nightmare in the whole world. Because I don't want anyone to be like me. When they look up to me, I tell them that maybe it's not exactly the best choice, but if you want to, I will not stop you. Because if you feel like that way, and if you want to support me, then by all means, go ahead. But now, I don't prepare them for disappointment. I don't want to disappoint them. In fact, I encourage them to try, at least. But if they don't want to support me, or if they want to leave, then I accept that. I've come to a point of acceptance of certain situations and certain scenarios to happen. If I lost a friend, I'm not just going to say, oh well, because it's obviously going to hurt. Especially if it was a close friend. But if they have justified enough reasons that I'm not going to disagree with, then fine. I understand. Considering that I am my own worst critic, I am my own worst hater, it's probably something that I can't argue against with. And again, when you teach yourself to hate you that much, it gets to a point where everything feels numb. Everything feels like you're under an ocean. Like you're in this imaginary place where everything is just clouded, where whoever's speaking to you in the moment is just muffled. All that noise is just canceled out almost. Because all you could think is about what you could have done, your regrets, your doubts, your everything. Or at least that's what happened to me. And I know this seems very pessimistic, but I'm actually more of a realist. And sometimes it can be easy to confuse the two because reality can be very harsh. But pessimism tries to defy reality even more so because it says that there is no other way, when reality says there's always a different way. There's always another solution. That's what I try to find. But to get to that solution is going to take a long time before I can actually say I'm in the clear. Because these thoughts, they don't go away overnight. They don't go away so easily on command. If they did, I would have been the happiest man alive by now. And so would have some people listening in. Some people wouldn't have to even go to this podcast or even recognize this subject. Some people would be oblivious to it. As most people say, ignorance is bliss. And to try to understand that, it also goes into being blissful to a lot of these negative thoughts. Because when you choose to ignore it out of habit, or because you're forcing yourself to, then that could be a step forward. Because you're choosing to choose. I know I'm saying that a lot, but you're deciding to go to a different path of life, of enjoyment, and then you start to feel spiritual, and all these other topics that I'd probably discuss later. But for now, to go over this negative mentality that you may or may not have, it's something that I think should be paid attention to as much as you can. Now, don't get me wrong. If you pay attention too much, you're going to be stuck in the heat of the moment. But if you slightly pay attention to it, and you more focus on your friends, on everything I just mentioned that's positive, it can start to fade away. And then later you realize, hey, I've come a long way. I've come a long way from feeling like that depression, or as some people may call it. I've come a long way from that anxiety that I used to get, From just a missing assignment, from a low grade, anything you could think of. Very easy to. It's very easy to overthink. It's probably the main message I want to emphasize on this episode. Because it's true. When you overthink, you start thinking irrational. You start believing that whatever someone else is about to tell you, whatever they have in mind that will fix all your problems, that it's false. That it's not actually the only solution or any solution to begin with. You'll start to think of your own, and that's where it gets to dangerous territory. Because when you think of it, it's very easy to say, I quit. It's hard to stay in, is what everyone tries to tell you as you're a kid growing up. And as cliche as it sounds, it's pretty true. As much as you want to just say, I'm done, there is no I'm done. Because you only live once, as they say. And to do as much as you can in your lifespan, it can feel like a lot of pressure. It can feel like you're not doing enough, which is not true, because your best ability really plays in whenever there's pressure. Sometimes that's how people learn. Whenever you're pressured to do something, it can be a little motivating, but not for the right reasons. To be motivated out of your own will, without being pressured by someone else or by some other entity, by something else, you have to start to let go. You have to start to come to acceptance. Not the stages of grief, per se, because there's nothing to grieve about whenever it's just about you. But you want to get to a point where you feel that embodiment of good things, of positive memories. You want to have those memories, and you want to write them down, maybe. Even take a picture, if you can, of something that relates to it, so that you can remind yourself that that is what you live for. You live for your friends. You live for quality. You live for the best moments of your life. Because, as they say, tomorrow becomes history. By tomorrow, that text that you sent to your friend, it's part of history now. You're going to look back at it at some point in your life. You're going to be like, oh man, I remember that time. You're going to feel the nostalgia for it. And I think that's why when they also tell you that you got to have lows to appreciate the highs, all those texts that you sent to your friend, you'll start to realize that you all take it for granted. But that is another topic for another discussion. So, to recap, and to repoint to what I was trying to say earlier, because I know that with all these discussions, I'm probably going to banter off and go to a completely different one. But I say all of this because when that negativity from that self-hatred that you just realized you had, it can overwhelm you when those good memories start to become ones that you wish never happened to you and that you don't deserve. But that is why we block it out. Because then we can live a life that isn't empty and that actually feels right. That it feels like there's nothing that can stop you. And it feels like there's more to be explored. And that's basically the essentials of how to deal with it. Not to, disregard it, but to come to a point where it doesn't matter. Where you're too happy to be negative. And as bad as that may seem, because being too happy, too negative, and as much as you want to get to that middle ground where it's right in between both, maybe being too happy can sometimes be beneficial. Because then you'll never want to give up. You'll never want to get out of that zone. Now, it'll be harder if you're pushed back into the negative zone, but essentially you'll pick yourself back up pretty fast, pretty quickly. That's what you want to look for. You want to look for that sweet spot that allows you to move so fast. away from all that bad energy that you've built up over years. Because that's what I have done. I've built mine over years. And some friends can't comprehend that. As much as they ask, what can I do to help you? I tell them nothing, because this is something I can only resolve on my own terms. You can only ever understand your own demons. And that's something that requires sometimes breaks. Breaks from social media, breaks from yourself, from visiting friends, whatever the breaks may be. And I think that's something that's very, very symbolic in a way. It's very metaphorical. But it's also a little ironic because after experiencing all that negativity, you feel free. So, moral of this whole entire podcast, if you're going to feel sad, just remember that the people around you care about you a lot. No matter how much they may not say it, they can show it. Sometimes they may not. But more often, they will tell stories about you, with you, and for you. And that's something you want to keep in mind. And yeah, I think that's the end for today's podcast session. I know it is still under 30 minutes, but I'm sure that within time I'll probably increase it. Now, before I end this off, you may have noticed that there was no music this whole entire session. That's because I wanted to be as genuine as possible. And the only sounds you hear are my voice and the voice of comfort, of rain. Of a little bit of calm rain. It may seem a little fast and a little rushed for being calm, but it's true. It's relatively calm. And I think that's sets the tone just right. So yeah, guys. My name is Brandon, and I'm your host for the Afterlife podcast. Thank you all so much for listening if you got this far. Don't forget to check out my socials and whatnot in case you're interested. And I don't know, just continue to have a good day, and I hope you all have a very, very nice week or weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.